talk for a few hours about the DG interconnection process. This presentation is a collaboration of the utilities in Massachusetts, along with the Clean Energy Center and the DOER. And we rotate these presentations across the utilities over the course of the year. At National Grid, we usually start these meetings off with a quick safety moment. And today, we wanted to just briefly mention we've got Halloween around the corner. And so we got a couple of slides here. I think most folks are, common sense around Halloween. Make sure you're not driving distracted. Make sure you're driving slow in the neighborhoods. Also want to mention it's deer season, right? I drive home and there's deer crossing places I normally don't see now. A lot of statistics out there around deer, like $5 billion in property damages across the country. So just be mindful, especially this time of year. Make sure you get your high beams on as you're driving in the neighborhoods when you can use them. So Halloween and deer. Be mindful when driving. Quick on the facilities and logistics. Most folks in the building, if you need to smoke outside the door, outside the building area, we've got a men's room and ladies' room right out this door here. Please put the phones on silent. Wanted to introduce, I think we got Jerry Goodman here this morning from the DOER. Jerry, do you want to say a couple of words? Right here. Thank you, Jerry, for joining us this morning. Again, this is a workshop where we talk through some of the trends that we see in Massachusetts, talk through the interconnection process, have a bit of a technical discussion, talk about there's a lot of activity now in the construction phase of the interconnection process, right? We still are receiving a lot of applications, especially very large applications, right? We've in the past had commonly seen 2 megawatt applications. Now it's time to see 5 and 8, 9 megawatt applications. So we're seeing that type of activity, but we're seeing a lot going through the construction pipeline. So we've got a section here we call post-interconnection service agreement coordination and timing. We'll be talking about that as well as the bills folks receive at the end of it. But I'm trying to walk through this quickly because we've got Tim Rowan with us. Tim has been with the group, probably he's got the most seniority. He's been in this space since 2002. This is where we like to direct all the hard questions to Tim. And Tim's going to leave us at 9:30, so I want to make sure we give Tim some time to go through his piece, which is going to be on recent developments. So let me turn over to Tim.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. So at the end of the, we're going to kind of go through some of the programs that are out there that we've had for a long time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time Another one. So some of the background of net metering. We all know what net metering is. It's been around a long time. The company, National Grid, always gets to their cap first, which is good in some ways, but bad in other ways, right? At the end of the day, our customer base is now paying for a lot more net metering subsidies than Eversource customer base is, because we're at our caps, and Eversource isn't anywhere close, right? They're 300 megawatts away still. But our customers, mass effort customers who take, are already paying for those additional subsidies. It's about almost $0.01 a kilowatt hour now from net metering. Is what's embedded in your bill that you'll see. And there's now almost 1.8 cents a kilowatt hour embedded in the supply piece, the same for the SREX, right? So it's almost 3 cents already in the mass effort bill folks get from us for service that's already paying for the programs that are out there. So again, that's our challenge about the net metering cap we have at National Grid. I mean, our customers are now paying more. Now, if we both net the cap at the same rate, then our customers will be paying the same for net metering as state policy requires, right? The state policy allows it to pass. We're all very supportive of the solar program. but it's blatantly unfair for national grid customers to be paying more. And don't get me started on the municipal light companies, because they don't pay anything. About 15% of the customers in Massachusetts aren't served by infrastructure utilities, or served by municipal light companies, and they don't pay anything toward these programs, net metering or solar or anything else. So there's this very big discrepancy in fairness of who's paying what, and that's why we push back on the cap, and that's why we're so supportive of the Solar Smart program, because that's going to move the program forward. And I know there's legislation discussing additional caps, and folks want to get more into the net metering, but it is something from national grid perspective that we need some fairness here. That's all. And there's ways that, with the increase in cap, our friends at Eversource and municipal light companies help pay that bill that our customers won't otherwise pay. Well, maybe that's a conversation that's worth having, but that doesn't seem to be a conversation folks want to have. So net metering is what it's been out there since the Green Speed Act of 07. You know, the first orders came out in late 2009. That's what created the whole big push of the big solar farms, and also for our customers to take advantage of solar behind the meter and do the original net metering gig. So go to the next slide here. You got all these slides. If you don't have them, we can send them to you. We all know what the credits are out there. One of the new things we've got, Jake, keep going, is that for new projects, there's the market net metering that's out there. It's part of the law that puts together the Solar Smart program as well. And this is where there's a decrease in payments to try to manage those costs, as I said. We're already paying 3 cents a kilowatt hour out of a 20-cent electric kilowatt hour bill for national grid customers now, right, to pay the program which we currently have. So there's changes in how much people pay depending on those projects. Obviously, the governmental entities are still getting a full credit calculation, which, as you know, is a standard offer, transmission, transition, and distribution. Right, standard offer is set to go to 12 cents in 2 weeks, November 1st, for Massachusetts, from about 9 cents. Winter pricing, for lots of reasons, is higher than the rest of the year, so that's kind of fun. That's 12 cents. They can get the credit, too, for that. Granted, less generation than you have in those winter months than you do in the other months. But, in terms of solar industry, it's good news. For the rest of the people paying a bill, it's not quite as good as this, right? And obviously, the cap is exempt projects. The project's 10 kilowatts and less connected to a single-phase line, or 25 kilowatts and less connected to a three-phase line. Those are the cap exempt facilities here. There's a lot of conversation currently going on. There's some various, go to the next one, Jake. This is really just talking about what's out there. I want to stress this point here. Even though our caps are hit, there's a whole process through the cabinet's massaca.org website where you can get on a waiting list for solar projects. And there's a lot of churn because you have requirements. Once you're in the system of assurance for getting cap allocation, you've got requirements you've got to meet. And if you don't, they kick you out. So even though it looks like our caps are met, because on paper they are, and we've got 5 megawatts on the private waiting list and 15 on the public waiting list right now, because of the churn, you're best get on the waiting list, because if you can stick it out, you will and can get cap allocation. We've got a lot of people right now who are very upset with us because they can't have net metering. But yet they had signed interconnection service agreements over a year ago that they could have gotten the waiting list. But for some reason chose not to. And that's some of the pressure we have to raise our caps. There's a lot of churn on that waiting list. If you go into the details, which is on their website, of all the projects, you can see who's going to kick off if they don't hit the next milestone. So it's really important that if you want to get into that metering in our footprint, to get on the waiting list. Because there's so much churn, and it's very, it's just a shame that folks don't understand that churn actually exists. Because we've got a lot of issues relative with various projects that likely would have gotten a cap allocation by now had they got on the waiting list over a year ago. So it's really important that even if you look at the thing, it doesn't look like there's cap allocation, jump on the waiting list if you really want to try taking advantage on that metering, because you may well end up on it. Now, if you got a 4 or 5 megawatt project, probably not. But if you got a couple hundred kilowatts, 300, 400 kilowatts, you've got a pretty good bet of probably getting into there, right? So don't, just because it shows it being full, please still make sure your installers, developers, your customer gets on the waiting list at least, right? And it's not a lot of money to get on that waiting list. Next one. And this is just a kind of a conversation about how you go through to get on to get a cap allocation, right? If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty straightforward. Again, these slides are available later on. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that metering because there's other programs I want to get to, and other new changes that we'll have to start implementing for interconnections. Okay. Again, there's eligibility about what you can do and what you can't do, in terms of what the parcel of land was, subdividing, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of orders out there, and it's not rocket science, but you do need to educate yourself about what these orders say, because there's lots of different orders that are out there that have impacted net metering eligibility. Now, by rights, solar on someone's roof, house or business, something like that, most of these don't apply to them, right? It's when you want to do something different with what you have, add more, or put another system on a business where you already have it, that you then run into some of these orders that you have to really understand. And we don't have real time to get into those specifics, but we can talk to some of that. Next thing. Again, other things here we need to understand. So if you're not eligible for net metering under today's rules, we've always had a way to pay, we've always had the requirement, frankly, to pay for customers for excess generation under our purple rules or as a qualified facility. Now the challenge there is that we're just passing through the average wholesale clearing price in the load zone we're in. So even though the retail prices for commodity can be quite high, the actual underlying wholesale cost are actually quite low. So it's only about 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So there is still a way. But remember, when you're a small enough customer, because of the metering constraints we have, you still can net a lot of the energy you use in a monthly billing cycle, and you only get paid the wholesale for the excess at the end of the month. So it's not, for the smaller projects especially, so there's still a lot of value in displacing the retail value of what you normally buy from National Grid. Next. There's some production reporting. Keep going here. And a lot of this is for your use after the fact here. One of the key things here is it's shocking to us, frankly, and maybe because of my engineering and mathematical background, but it's shocking to me how people fail to properly add up all their accounts on a schedule, right? To go through an analysis and figure out what your estimated generation is, your estimated credits will be, and how you're going to allocate those credits. There's massive confusion around this issue. And it's pretty straightforward, right? If you've got a city or town that their police station is 20% of their total energy bills, well, you allocate 20% on the Schedule D, right? It makes sense. For whatever reason, we've got a lot of confusion out there about this thing. And I understand it because obviously the credits are issued on a monthly basis as generated, right? And when folks have talked to these cities and towns, they say, your savings are going to be $1 million a year. And they naturally think, oh, okay, $1 million divided by 12 months gives me X dollars a month. That's what I should see on bills. And what it really is it follows it's a generation of the solar power. So you get a lot more credits in certain months than you get in other months. You need to understand that accounting. But it is a very confusing thing. We do work with our customers to try to fix them and clean them up going forward. But it does require, upkeep. Every year you should review whoever projects you're working with, what Schedule D, are they still allocating the right amount to all the right accounts? It's something that you do have to keep up with. Okay. So the new program is on its way. They did issue the RFP for the administrator of the program. They're still pending. There's still some conversations about that going on. We expect some announcement as to who that will be shortly. The RFP for the initial, not sure if you recall how this worked, but SolarSmart to set the initial pricing, they were going to put out an RFP RFP for the first 100 megawatts, and that will kind of set pricing going forward. So that's, again, still being worked on, expected to be issued sometime in November, and then folks will respond to that, and then we'll then give folks the winning, whoever won those, and have those prices, and that will set the thing going forward. The utilities have filed the tariff that's required to implement this program with the Mass Department of Public Utilities. They're still working through that. We're hoping sometimes in the spring, whether it'll be April 1st or a little later, you know, that's still a lot, there's a lot to it. It's a pretty complicated tariff, right? It's not that straightforward, so there's a lot of work to get people to understand it and to work with us on it. So it wouldn't surprise me that if that April date slips a little bit on that thing. But again, once it's in place, it's the new 1,600 megawatts over the next 10 years. And obviously, National Grid is about half of the state's load. So we'll probably end up with about 800 megawatts as our allocation for that solar smart program going forward. So plenty to go around. Didn't want to get into some of these issues related to, you know, all the solar's gone in, right? We now have 800 megawatts or so connected to our system in Massachusetts. We have about a 5 gigawatt peak load, 5,000 megawatt peak load on a hot summer day. On Memorial Day weekend with no air conditioning and no heat load, our load is only about 2,500 megawatts. But you still have the 800 megawatts of solar because that's pumping out full blast at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sunday, Memorial Day weekend, right? It's got nice cool weather, get good sun, yada, yada, yada. So we do our analysis, and really it's all about what the impact is on the system at that minimum load, maximum generation. So now you can see that from our local distribution network, the little 13,000 volts outside here, once you get enough of that stuff, now you're going to affect the 150,000 volt transmission system, which is happening. Through the substation in West Warren, go to West Road South, we're looking at potentially having to replace a 40 megawatt transformer just because of the amount of solar that wants to connect to that substation. We routinely export 5 to 15 megawatts every afternoon out of that substation up to the transmission system. So that's when the ISO million gets anxious about this. So there's some really requirements when you get to the larger projects that they get involved in. We coordinate that with our distribution plan folks and our sister company and Empower through their transmission plan folks. So some of that work that's got to be done here. Okay, the next one. Talked a little about QS already. That's a handsome man. So the prior slide was really about some of the studies that they get involved with, and they're getting more and more involved. Again, you know, back in the day, it was 5 megawatts or more, they would definitely be engaged. Now, because of the high level of saturation in parts of our system, even a few hundred kilowatts kind of puts you over the edge. And putting you over the edge is exports of transmission. Right? The load at that particular substation is such that all the solar in that area is now pushing up into the transmission system, which is fine when we do our analysis and reviews and studies because we can manage that impact, but that's when the ISO gets engaged. We talked about QS a little bit. Okay. The other piece here is that there are occasions where, and it's pretty rare because of the level of subsidies Massachusetts has had for a long time, rarely do people kind of connect and want to sell at the wholesale market because, as I said, it's 4 cents. You want 4 logic cents, right? You either want cent metering, or you want the FX, or you want the solar smart. So this doesn't get involved, but there is a process there that if you get engaged with some of those bigger projects, you might have to get engaged with, but you have to get to it. Okay? So here is the big change that we want to get into, and when we get into some of the technical conversations with you, we'll get to a little bit more here. When you have, and our footprint is 800 megawatts, right? Massachusetts has about 1,200 megawatts installed on the distribution system now, right? When we get to that level of generation, right now under UL 1741, if there's a disturbance, you're supposed to trip offline. Wait 5 minutes before you restart, right? That's how the inverters are designed and work. Now, the challenge with that is if there's a big system disturbance, if a Seabrook nuclear power station trips offline, if a big old tree takes out a 115 kV transmission line someplace and disrupts the bulk transmission generation system, What you don't want to have is a bunch of generation tripping off that could cascade a small outage to a very, very big one. So so at the bulk generation level, the Seabrooks and the repowering of Brayton Point and Esling, they're required to ride through. When there's this disturbance, they're going to keep pushing out power till a certain point, then they'll trip off too. At least they're gonna not make a small outage a big one and make it a cascading outage. All the big outages on the East Coast, the recent one in 2003 was a cascading outage. It was a relatively small event in the city of Cleveland that cascaded through into New York State. The only reason New England wasn't affected that day is because we were actually exporting power into New York State during that event, and that's what saved. We had a few more cycles to respond and trip those lines going to New York, which protected New England from going down from that 2002 blackout. So because of that, and through the IEEE 1547 process, there's a real need for voltage and frequency rising. When there's a system disturbance, two things happen. Voltages drop and frequency drops. So you want to make sure when they're dropping to a certain point, the system, the big generation stays online. Now we have to think about the other level of generation that's on a distribution system to make sure it doesn't contribute to a cascading outage. And so there are new requirements we will be having to enforce come January 1st of this year. There's new inverters that are set up specifically labeled SA, and we'll have to. So we won't be able to use your old 7041 inverters that have been out there for a long time. We ran through this back in the mid-2000s when they changed some of the requirements for not for rising, but for anti-islanding with inverters technology. And we had a period of time where we had to say, look, you can't use the old inverters, you've got to get the new ones. And this is what this transition is going to require too. You've got to get to the new grid interactive type inverters, not the old ones. And that's going to be something that's going to be a change. And most of the vendors have these already in place, already ready to go. And we haven't really got clarity on delta in pricing. Obviously, I'm sure there probably will be, but again, that's going to be. So just to get into some of the details, it gets a little bit technical here, Jake. Some of the ride-through things here, how long things have to hang in for based on frequency and voltage. I mean, this is obviously much more pertinent to whoever your electrical engineer is who's designing your system. But it is something that we're going to have to enforce because, again, we're part of obviously the ISO in the system. When they have outages, obviously our customers see outages, right? And people know National Grid, so even if it's an ISO type event, it's usually people point the finger at us about it. So we're all members of the transmission operating agreement anyway, so we're required to follow these rules. Next one, Jake. So again, these are more of the projects that are out there and what you have to do. And this is starting to bring in, you've heard about the grid interactive inverters, you've heard about voltage support inverters. So we're starting to go down that path now. And talked about for a while, but now we're starting to go down the path. We've had a couple of R&D projects in our footprint with a bunch of projects with storage and solar in certain locations just to figure out how best to use these new inverter functionalities that we haven't used yet. And we haven't even allowed them to be used on our system yet. But now we've got to move forward. And this is going to be system-wide throughout New England. So it's not simply, National Grid, Massachusetts, it's Eversource, down in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, the whole footprint center. And all the ISOs are going to push this forward. And places where you don't have ISOs, the transmission owners will have to push this forward as well. So it's just a new world. We have to recognize this. It's changing going forward. And it's frankly due to our success. Because of all the solar at that distribution level, that's what's causing the need. Because we don't want to get into a Germany problem, right? You probably heard Germany, they've had to go back and retrofit a lot of inverters. So they're spending billions of dollars doing that. And we want to get ahead of that before we have a Germany problem. So, and that's what this stuff does. So that's all I had, but I have time for a few questions. I know I went through a lot quickly. Yeah.
Existing inverters, I just had a megawatt in. I'm not sure if it's disconnected yet. We've had it done January after it's So I'm not sure what that, would that inverter have to be changed?
No.
Changed out?
All projects for filing for application after January 1st will be required to do this. So everything out there is grandfathered. Obviously, going back requiring changes, we don't have, I don't think our tariffs allow us to require those changes. And so it's been quite good. Anything else? Yeah.
Hey, what's the crystal ball say on the cap getting up to before March?
I say none. Zip all. Well, that's Tim Rohn's opinion. Right? But the bottom line is there's a gross disparity between what I pay in Brookfield, Massachusetts as a national electric customer, national grid Massachusetts customer, and what someone pays in an Eversource town for these solar programs. There's a huge disparity. It's almost twice as much. And it's just not fair to our customers. It's just that simple. And there's a way to make parity around that. That'd be something we could talk about. But that's where the Solar Smart program comes in. Remember, it's a feed-in tariff. You're not looking at net credits in 1 month of 16 cents, another month of 20 cents. You're not looking at a market of SREX that might go from $250 to $350. You'll get a fixed price for the 20-year term of the project. We've been very successful with the feed-in tariff we have in Rhode Island. Because that's where, if you get to the multiple megawatt project, we're getting a 15 or 18 cent price for 20 years. And they know walking into their bank, that's what I'm going to get. There's no question whether I will or won't. There's not a change. Because, if indeed we ran into some sort of situation where the price of power did drop dramatically, and over the summer, when you look at the underlying wholesale prices, believe it or not, they're very low. And except for the gas constraint problem. We could run into, I talked about the commodity, it could get down to 4, 5, 6 cents. And now naturally, your net credit goes from a big hunk of numbers to a very small number, right? So the feed-in tariff is designed to prevent and provide that service. So, we all made a deal. So it's kind of disappointing to us that people are bringing this issue up again. But hey, that's just Tim Rohn talking. Yep.
A common theme that I'm seeing kind of across the commercial market is a couple years ago, people were looking at going solar. They wanted to invest, but they wanted to kind of test, the market. So they would install like a couple hundred kW systems. So now they're seeing the benefits of the solar. Prices have dropped. They're looking to expand capacity, and this kind of gets us to the point, usually at a commercial level, is like PPA or lease or something like that. So this brings us to the single parcel, single meter rule. I'm interested to know the language that actually prevents another meter on the property, because if it's on a PPA or lease, bringing that system into the new net metering regime is somewhat of a negative. So it's kind of
you'd have to get a new cap allocation. You'd have to get in the waiting list to try to do that behind the meter. There's no restriction on multiple projects on a single parcel. The restriction is on one net metering project per parcel.
correct.
So you can have another one, right, under the Solar Smart program, for example. Once that's up and running, now it'll have these separately metered. That's relatively simple, right? And then you get a check and you just apply it to your electric bill, whatever you want to do with it, right? So that's been, the whole challenge of that was always about gaming, making sure everyone had their chance at it, knowing we had caps. So, there's, again, I don't recall which specific, wasn't on a seat. Our attorney, Leanna Moore and Nancy Israel are back there who assist us greatly in our regulatory reviews of this stuff.
So just as long as it falls into a different incentive program, you're able to have an additional net metering program.
Again, it's not net meter. It's a gen meter. Yeah, generation only. Generation only account.
Okay. So it's generally that you don't get the net meter though.
Well, yeah, but you'll get something equivalent to the value, right? It won't be net metering plus SREC value, right? But it'll be some other value that's a little bit less than that, but it'll probably in that same net metering number. So, and remember, the whole premise was we know prices of solar have gone down dramatically. When this all started in 2010 with net metering, residential costs were $6, $7 a watt. Commercial grade was $3 and $4 a watt. We know now, residential, you can get them for $3 a watt. And we know now, a 4 megawatt solar farm, you can get for $1.50 a watt. Right? So there's no reason to still pay a 60-cent value, which is what SREC 1 and net metering was in 2010. SREC 2 and net metering dropped that down about 45 cents. right? And Solar Smart will probably drop it to the 15 to 20% number. But, I mean, the underlying costs have dropped so dramatically that we have to be, as careful with our customer money as we possibly can. I guess is what I'm driving at. Since everyone else pays for this, right? It's not free money, right? And that's, but yeah, that's.
But I guess I do need to understand a little bit more because the energy and the Schedule D is kind of the net metering to be able to allocate to other entities. It is, if you're putting in a system that's larger than what actually the host requires, and you're looking to extend to off-takers, you lack that ability without that new program's net meters, right?
Well, once you get a check, you can do whatever you want with a check, right? Instead of being collecting it's an account and allocating, you're just going to get money, right? At the end of the day. Yeah, there's the incremental, right? There's going to be
because constant churn here, so far as yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we'll
take that question offline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a question offline and say, just show a hand from the National Grid Organization and help me navigate.
Well, let's not talk about that yet because the tariff is still in flux. Right? We don't know the final rules. We proposed some rules. Whether that becomes the final or not, I would want to have a much more clarity on where the DOER, Department of Public Utilities, is, and then at a future seminar we can then talk to the details of how this will or won't work.
Yeah. In a qualifying facility, is the payment just on the net if they don't use, like if they keep it, if they're able to use most of the electricity and just a little bit goes back, or I don't understand how the force steps.
So here's and it's different depending on how you're on the type of metering. If it's over 60 kilowatts, we have an interval meter where we know how much you're using every 5 minutes. Right? When we have that, what you're getting is an hourly net value to the coincident load to generation. So if you're getting 100 kilowatts load at that hour, you'll have zero for energy flowing from the grid, right? And you'll have zero flowing out. So that's the retail value. If in that same hour you have 150 kilowatts generation and 100 kilowatts of load, 50 kilowatts of flow out, that gets paid to 4 cents. So, but if you're under 60 kilowatts, you're actually allowed to, because it's just a metering constraint, you're actually netting that whole month. And at the end of the month, you're only getting the 4 cents on the excess, if you have an excess. Right?
Is there any way to model that to be able to predict what the savings are going to be or how much it's going to get? If the customer doesn't have
sure, if you got the monthly usage data and you've got your standard PV Watch 2 program, whatever you got, that shows your monthly generation, you should be able to apply the two together and see it. I talk to a lot of people about with a larger project where you have interval meters, you really have to do an 8,760 hours load curve and overlay 8,760 expected generation first to see it. And when they do that, believe it or not, they realize there's very few kilowatt hours that are only getting 4 cents. Most of them are still displacing the retail because it's coincidence. That's how we used to design solar years ago, prior to the net metering routine running today. That's how the solar used to be designed, to match as much as you could the coincident load of the customer. So you get the full retail value. If it's being served on site, you're not pulling a 20-cent kilowatt hour from the system to serve the load. So that effective value is 20 cents kilowatt hour for that kilowatt hour from that solar that's coincident with the load. All right. I've got to run, folks. John, one more question?
Yeah, just quickly, if anyone's interested in Florida and you have access to partnerships with your own in the state, South Station.
Okay. I'm sorry, when is that again?
Tuesday, 10 a.m.
Tuesday, 10 a.m. at the GPU? Okay, excellent. Good. We will move on to Will Kern. Will, come on.
Yeah. Hey everybody, so my name is Will Kern. I am the manager of what we call Customer Energy Integration, so Kevin's overall department, which covers New York and New England. I'm responsible for Massachusetts and this area up here as part of that. So what we'll do after the break,
I got a number of my team members here. We'll introduce them at that time. And you'll see a bunch of them as they come up here for various aspects of the presentation here. So what I just really wanted to talk about real quick, I normally go first before Tim, but Tim with his time restraints, we got him in and went over some heavier stuff. This is more just about the trends that we're seeing as part of last year versus this year, year to date. Alright, so this one we all know what towns National Grid has at this point. Let's go to the next slide. Alright, so the trends that we're seeing in a nutshell, right? We are seeing fewer applications and higher megawatts, right? So what we saw last year was more of an influx in residential, right? So smaller sizes, right, but a higher number of applications. What we've seen here over the last year, right, or what 2016 calendar year versus 2017 calendar year to date has shown us is that the applications have come way down, but the megawatts have gone way up, right? So we're not seeing as much residential as we are seeing, commercial in the industrial side, and then specific, solar farms or other type work like that. All right, so this is kind of just showing the same thing over again with the actual numbers. You can see that received calendar year to date as of September 2017, we've received 5,300 applications. Same period of time in current year in calendar year 16, right, we saw over 10,000. So we're seeing about half the number of applications. But in the overall numbers, we're seeing more than 500 megawatts, right, as part of those applications to date versus 200 megawatts from last year. So, right, so exactly as I was kind of saying, far less applications, far more megawatts on those less applications. And just, this is what we've interconnected so far this year, right? So to date, September 2017, we've interconnected 154 megawatts. And then to date, in 2016, right, to September, we had only connected 117 megawatts, right? So even what we're doing. So we're seeing an increased amount of load on our team here, right? So we have a number of projects that are active, right? We've been trying to grow our team. We've added a number of people over the last couple of months to kind of keep up with the managing of the sheer number and volume of large projects that are starting to come in. And we're seeing and trying to get those pushed through, right? Our busiest period of time is actually right now, right? As I finish up by the end of the calendar year for tax incentives and all those different things, we actually end up interconnecting about 60% of our year in the last third, right? So if you think about a 4-month period of time, we do 60% of our work. So we do more in less than half of our calendar year. All right, so those are just a couple of points that I wanted to bring up here. So we'll kind of jump into Alex's portion of the presentation here about the actual interconnection process.
All right. Here's about the interconnection process here. Just to show of hands, how many have been through the interconnection process before? Okay, perfect. How many people are here for standard? Okay, good. Simplified? All right, all right. So I'm trying to make this interactive here. We'll try. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask. And go from there. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna cover here, the steps, what the costs are, timetable, and any comment steps. Let's take a look at that. So the main reason why we do this, safety. Right, one of the main things here. Also, safety, why? Because after you install a system, what happens 20 years down the road? Right? Who's there to see it? Is the plaques there? Is anything pending up there? So you want to make sure that, safety is one of the key items there, along with the impacts of our system there. So as National Grid, we're supposed to guarantee quality to your neighbors as well. So we make sure that we do our homework to make sure that any of these items here doesn't cause an adverse effect. And so hence because of that is that in order for you to connect, you need approval from the utility company. And also billing implications. So if you have billing issues, my dad might come up there. If you install a system, you don't contact us, if you call the wrong meter, that export you have, won't be charged for it. So make sure that, you talk to us early and often. If you want to get ahead of things, try and meet your need dates. It's very important to kind of let whoever the project manager is on that switch side know, hey, I'm looking to come on by the end of the year, and we can kind of guide you from there. All right, so here is some process steps here. So, it depends on the size, and it depends on the type of the generation system you're using. That it might filter down. So we have the pre-apps, simplified, expedited, impact studies, detail studies. Once you've got past that and we issue the additional service agreement, that's the conditional approval there. You can begin constructing your system. Now, once you're done with, once you're finished with that, once we receive payment, naturally we'll do our construction as well. Then, if it's a larger system size for wind affected, really wind affected, any project 500 kW or larger, would need to have that. And then once you satisfy all the necessary documentation, then you get the authority to connect. So right here, I kind of have a little arrow here in the lines. So each of those kind of things, what I kind of did is it's kind of a stop and go, right? You send like an application to us. You promote that in turn gets a reaction from the utility company, National Grid, right? So then we return and say, well, do you want to proceed forward? Here's what we have so far. If you want to proceed forward, there's additional cost to it. So in that same way, there's multiple steps on the pathway. So at the end of the day, when you get to this endpoint right here, you should already know fully what the costs are. You should already know what the scope is for your work here, and you shouldn't be surprised by how long the construction would take or anything else if you work with us and understand that. So these pre-app report here is the first time we'll cover. So on the left-hand side is what the customer provides: contact information, alternate any alternate information. Most importantly is the facility location. Where's the facility located? Google Map, picture, GPS coordinates. That's key. A lot of times we get hundreds of those like a week there, and people just put a map here and there's no cross reference. So if I want to look at my EMS system here, I see one street. Okay, the street goes 2 miles across. So it's hard to figure out. If I know a land map or where the water is, I can better pinpoint it. So as long as you include the necessary references and stuff like a cross street, okay, the CG, when I'm looking at it, okay, it'll be in this area here relatively. Then I can figure out on the utility side here is how much generation that's already on the feeder, or what's proposed. Also, if what the circuit is, and if there's any three-phase close by. If a single phase all the way through, you need a three-phase extension. So within this pre-app report, you get a high-level snapshot. Hey, this might be, you have to do a three-phase extension for a mile. All right, so then you can factor out that, okay, this is what the cost is. You can see, hey, should I proceed forward with my project or not? So that's hence what we have for this pre-app. Any questions? Okay. All right, so then after that, this is for the complex standard expedited application. So everything starts with the application, right? So then we have the pre-app report, as I just mentioned, an application fee. So it's $450 per kilowatt, $300 minimum, $7,500 maximum. So also the P stands one line, and also relays if it's over 500 kW. And also a site diagram as well, and anything that documentation issues that we see, it stops the clock. Check out ESP 76 as a guide. See that Dini will talk more about that in her part, but it's helpful there too that you reference that, and we want to help you guys get things connected. The main way how you help us out to make sure we get everything done connected sooner is everyone knows what to expect from utility. So from National Grid. So we put all this information out there. We have a lot of information on our website too. So if the more you learn and absorb more, the more you interact with us, the smoother the process will be. Opposed to, if someone doesn't know the process, that means, hey, Alex, can you explain the process? Sure. I'll spend like an hour or half an hour talking to them, here's what their own process is. But if you already know that, great. It gives you a better opportunity for understanding of what's required. And also, electronic documentation, obviously, is always preferred method here. So, some items here for common mistakes. So, application not signed and dated. That's one of the key things here. So, if you are switching between net metering to QF, you need to update application signed and dated. What we want to see is that here's the latest revision. Here's what you're proceeding forward with. If your size changed on your system there, right, we would need an updated application signed and dated. So we know, okay, when someone looks at my work, what I'm doing, they can see, here's the old application, here's a new one proposed by the customer, this is how we're getting there. So, also the name differs on the utility count. So it's important for Schedule D, Camel Hill later on we'll talk about this, is if your account doesn't match with your Schedule D. So then it's going to have a billing issue. And as Tim mentioned earlier too about the allocation of net metering, as well, that, if the numbers, percent points don't match up. So if the address is incorrect, meters are included there. Also, if this is a new service, we call a service request group there. They will provide you a penny account number and a work request number. You take that information, you have to ask comply for the penny account number, and put that on the application. So then, from there is when we get started. Okay. So, just to add more to it, for information, the documentation mistakes that happen, very common is a legal info document. So, the legal info document is important to us because it helps us draft up the Interconnection Service Agreement. Also, if there's any amendments that we need to do as well, that's important too. So, if your legal name is not correct, or if your organization is not there, that's kind of key things that we need to make sure here. So when we draft agreements, we want to do it right the first time. Sounds like, and opposed to, I send this information out, and someone says, oh, this is not right, it's not right. Right? Causes delays. So we want to try to make sure that we provide all their information. So if the people ownership change, anything else that's happened with the project has changed from what was submitted before, please provide a legal document. Updated. So, one-line errors, that's just show all necessary equipment. This kind of goes to ESP 76.C. For large-scale one, what we need for equipment-wise from that, where that line is you're connected to, probably have the pole number. From this feeder here, okay, so you're looking for this relative area, and we can figure that out and work our way back from there. So from the POI over the point of interconnection to the PTC, that's where the point where the meter is, mainly, and usually the large-scale ones. That's the key part, and then everything after that from the PCC to the inverter is what, we want to see as well documented on your one line. So, also, if there's any site plan errors. So one of the common ones is that access road. If your access road, if you're showing you're going into your site there, well, how big is your access road? If you're going to a specific, rural area, if our trucks go down this road, then we turn around somewhere. So you have to plan accordingly, making sure that your access road, and this is where you get more input from the, project manager as well too, telling you, okay, gravel road or something else there too. It'll help explain that. So then we want to see that when we look at the site diagram. Okay, you planned for that. Okay, here's your site here. Here's where you're planning to connect to. It makes it very clearly for us here. So when we take this information, hand it over to the next people that's going to do the work, they know what's happening.
Yep. Often is not available. Usually not.
Yep. I mean, as soon as it's, if you have information, if it's maybe later on the process, I mean, that's fine too, as long as it's at the end of the project is provided there. So, usually, you might get something through the, impact study as well, that would help out with that based on what you have for values. and then, that's, you provide it when you can. At the end of the day, when you're kind of closing the project out for a large scale, that's one of the things we need to definitely have. Okay?
Just keep in mind that we release that information there before we start the study. Can't complete protection review or design review if you don't have that information. So make sure that you've got the confidence ratio on there, as well as the KVA rating of that transformer. You can always call the manufacturer and say, what is it for this type of transformer that you buy? Because we need that information in order to study it and make conclusions on whether you need to do a closure on the circuit or not, for example. So you do need to have that information then to start the larger impact.
So, very important to mention for model. So, we need to have information. Thank you.
We have a question online about asking for transformer information. Are we required to present National Grid transformers, or is that only for transformers on the customer side?
I mean, we should have that information for transformers. Also, it'd be on the transformer itself. There would be a nameplate on a National Grid transformer. If you want to provide that, that's great. If you want to say utility transformer, that's acceptable as well. But, that helps you out when you're planning the project. You know what system size you're dealing with, and figure out, okay, this might need to upgrade or not.
In general, if you ask National Grid what it is, and then you look at the one line to select that, this would it doesn't get held up, but it's one thing to ask National Grid for that information. But if you do show utility transformer, that's acceptable as well.
The avenue to actually pass that information on utility-owned equipment, where is that?
I mean, you can send us an email to our shared inbox to Regard Generation. It's just something that our customer service should be able to assign, have someone to help out with that. And if you're on site there, there's multiple ways. If you go to a transformer, you can kind of see here's what the rating is. If it's kind of skewed or something else, you can't figure that out being on site, then you give us a call. We'll help you out the way. So, if you call customer service there, they should be able to tell you, okay, if you're looking at this pole here or this whatever point you're coming from, okay, here's how your service or here's the transformer. All right. So now we're talking about the cost here. So there's a bunch of, when I talked about before that arrow there, about the start-stop time frame, right? So with this start-stop time frame here, there's cost. So application fee. Okay, you passed the first part here. Supplemental review, if it's needed. Impact study, detail study, if you get that, if we need that information. System modifications. Any window test fees. If there's anything designing, installation, construction there, that's one of the key things that need to happen. So then if we're missing information, it puts a stop there. We can't go proceed forward. If we need to collect the cost there, we can't proceed forward. And how does National Grid know that your project's real? You pay us, right? Anyone can ask for inquiries. If you don't give us money, we don't know how real a project is. Okay. So from here we have the simplified review pack. So as Tim mentioned earlier, 15 kW for a single phase, 25 for a three-phase, and it has to be a UL listed inverter. So for this here, for the simplified here, there's a $28 application fee. And also completed and signed application. Approval is usually within 10 days. So 3 days to acknowledge, 10 days to review completeness. And usually we can probably do these both at the same time when we do a simplified. And then if there's any completion documentation needed, provide that at that time. So, once we see that information, your utility, once we see that certificate completion, and, if we choose to waive it, which we majority of the time do, then we would install the requested bidirectional meter to be installed. Once the bidirectional meter has been installed, you verify the count is recorded correctly, then you get your authority to connect. This is for the simplified.
Does that apply to machines behind an inverter?
Yeah, inverter-based machines, yeah. It has to be UL listed. So then single phase here, so for expedited, it's nothing that's, for simplified. So it's kind of a step up. So it's greater than 25 on a, three phase, greater than 15 on a single phase, and assuming it passes the screenings, as well. So pretty much for this one, if it's UL listed here, and, generally maybe under 500 kW, it might have a chance to go, expedited. But depends on the screenings that we do for our reviews. So then, there's usually little or no system modification costs. The most you typically deal with expedited process is probably a transformer change. So there's that. So if we can, if we can do 30 engineering hours of work, we think might need additional study made and might need to be done. We can do a supplemental review here. So, that provides an additional way of trying to still keep it within the time frame here, because the total maximum days here is about 45 days. 65 is just going to be a supplemental review here. So then it'll have National Grid can respond, once you sign the agreement and pay, then that's where National Grid starts. And, and it takes 20 days for that, and we try to determine if there is any requirements or anything else needs modification. If there's additional engineering time, meaning modeling, anything to do with site visits, look at, that's, and we can't cover it in 30 hours, then it kind of kicks over more to the standard process. And also, last thing to mention here is that when it touches fee is $300 plus travel time. So then, just explain a little more about the simplified review process. So for that, as I mentioned before, agreement and payment. So one of the key things they look out here is average generation less than 67% of the limit on the feeder. And also look at the voltage quality, reliability, safety. So those are the type things we look at. The fees for that is, the maximum we can collect there is $4,500. So then, again, we determine any system modifications that are needed, and also, the reasoning and behind that. So, as I said before, if they can't do it in 30 hours, go to an impact study. So, for the standard review path here, so this is like the catch-all. So, if you pass by the simplified, expedited, it's still probably system qualified. Everything else will go on to the standard review path here. So, any non-listed inverters, any large-scale DC greater than 500 kW, relatively, and most HPs as well. So for here, we talked about the impact study, and Tim has mentioned about the ISO notification, the transmission study needs to be done. So for the impact study standard process here, one key thing to say is right here, it takes 55 days to do. So I kind of blew this up here. So everything else is pretty much the same here as the two other time frames you looked at before. So the only thing here that changes is 20 days for the initial review. Then we get the agreement out. Usually we can combine these two together and get you at the same time. Then, you may have to make a decision. Do you want to proceed forward with an impact study? So, we're going to give you agreement here to sign and a cost. And if you still want to proceed forward, you pay for the cost and we take it there. And then once we have someone working on it, then you can ask more detailed questions there about, hey, how does it look here? We give you a 20-day review to see if there's any impact to our substation. They kind of give you a high level, to see if there's 3V0 or DPT. But then we'll cover more of that in her part.
Is there any documentation on what types of projects are likely to trigger a detailed study?
It depends. It depends on how much cost it is. If it's say $1 million for the cost, might trigger it. But there's other reasons too where we might need a detailed study. So it's a general guide and it depends specifically on the area we're looking at, how congested it is. That makes it a lot more tougher there for our review. So once we know that information, then we can kind of determine what it is, and we'll explain that too. The detailed study is needed. We'll explain how we got that.
The two timeframes here. Is there any particular reason why the detailed study actually takes less time than the impact study? I would think that the detailed would require more time than the impact study.
I mean, this is the one that working group has put together for 30 days. So if it gets more complex, and it's called standard complex tier, that track will actually allow 55 days. So if its cost is over $1 million or so, and there's a lot of additional work involved, and if what we're doing, if we don't have enough money to finish in, if our review is more complex in the impact study, then this might take additional time, or we'll let you know if there's substation work involved, something else. Then hey, this might be standard complex, and this number here, 30 days, gets bumped to 55 days, actually 60 days. So here's just a general guideline. I just kind of throw in slide here just to kind of explain that for the non-dedicated circuits, you can do maybe 4.5 megawatts, on a 13 kVA class. If it's you can do for solar 6 megawatts on a 23 kVA class feeder. The key thing is where's the feeder you're trying to connect to? That's the key point there too. And if you're closer to the substation, probably the better. Now, if you're doing something that's express feeder, pretty much no load, you can go up to I've seen 30 megawatts MVA on a 34.5 kVA class feeder. Also for solar, it's for a 14 megawatt one, 14 megawatts on a 13 kVA class. What this kind of slide I kind of threw in there, what is meant to mean is when you see a pre-app report there, you can kind of figure out, well, how much it is. Is it saturated so much? If it's saturated so much and you can see there's more load than generation, then that's where the cost will start coming up here. Yes.
So if the municipal project is anticipated, can they know ahead of time the municipal lines or hours that are going to be with a large?
When you say the municipal project, are you saying it's in a town? Okay, in national territory. Okay.
Do you have information for them about the relative congestion of the?
Yeah, I mean, with the pre-app report, it should tell you that. What it is for that particular feeder.
But they have to get that far and file it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So once they file the pre-application report, then we give you all that nice detail to kind of help you out. Yep. There.
Yeah.
What's the best way for developers to estimate the total interconnection application time from initial submission to execution? For example, are there congestion maps available so we can see how congested our project areas are?
I think Jerry just mentioned that. There's a map if you go to the DO website, and you'll be able to search for it, you can find it. Anything else?
I got one quick.
Oh, sure.
The cost range that kind of gets triggered when impact studies and details, is it case by case, or is there somewhat of a common theme that kind of comes up in order to move forward into the impact study? It's kind of, you get that, that cost, like $18,000 or something.
Okay, what the cost is for impact
trying
study?
to kind of forecast that. Yeah, we know we're interconnecting a large system, maybe like 3-4 megawatts, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We know there's going to be some sort of impact. But from like a developmental point of view, kind of get some sort of, forecast for that to build into the model, kind of
versus just kind of like all of a sudden like a $20,000 payments due to kind of move the project forward. Is there some sort of way of kind of forecasting that?
I mean, okay, I don't know if people here or not. So this is a way to summarize impact studies and what the costs are of impact studies. So, it's more complicated than that. So it depends, as I said before, is how much is on the meter. So say, for example, you have a 1 megawatt project, you want to come online, right? But then if there's already 3 megawatts already connected in the meter, you have to study that 3 megawatts plus your 1 megawatt. So then, the cost might be 30K, or it might be, depends on, how complex it is. And also too, for, the cost there too, we say how much time we feel, how much reviews we need to do, what else do we need to check, how many people, groups, other groups you need to get involved for that. So that way, sometimes it might mushroom to maybe 50 or something higher, depends on how much of the size you're going up by. If it's so that's kind of like a rough, I guess, here. It's not like an exact science I can pinpoint for you. If I can just kind of tell you, if you got a rough guideline, okay, if you're doing, a 4 megawatt project or so, okay, maybe it's 50, But, if you go through analysis and review, and usually that screening would when you go through that initial review, that would tell you that cost.
Is there some place that actually, like, itemizes, like, utility upgrades that have occurred as a result of other past solar systems? So we know that, maybe in this area that this kind of E0 upgrade has actually occurred already. Mm-hmm. The likelihood of that coming up again, maybe not so much. Yeah. But we don't really have any information involved with what actually has occurred from the upgrade on the grid as a result of adjacent solar projects in the past.
Yeah. I mean, for that, it's very tough there, and also it's kind of, Tim mentioned, like the SIRP, requirements there too. We don't like publicize the, substations, you kind of see that when you walk through, but mainly the transmission lines are, the grade outs are protected there. So, it's kind of a hard question to answer there of trying to figure out, what has 3v0 happened in substations. You can ask, and we can kind of tell you, what we know of, and then once you see a project there, and go from there. But there's no, from my knowledge here, there's no public record of that. Yep.
Alan, continue on this concept of transparency for a moment. In one sense, I think some of your interconnection procedures similar to what I see connected with watch generated by N-1, N-2, etc. You don't necessarily use operating procedures for an N-1, you've got to pay that money. So if you have to criticize and what if some developers say, well, I can't really shut my inverter off. Well, there's a lot of precedent in my opinion. Continuing with that line for a second, as you may know, there are the studies, the certain studies by ISO, whatever are publicly available. To the extent the applicant asks for something that can be redacted, it's generally not, because it's pretty technical. I think some of that information, if we could have that available on the website, I understand completely that something doesn't come for nothing. It could cost money, there's more people, I get it. But that I think would help. So perhaps, and this is probably a more appropriate question for the connection working group, but I think as we continue to explore, we're going to get more congestion. I think we have to re-look at how we're going to do some services. Otherwise, I just don't think at the end of the day, it's a technical process as it was 50 years ago. And I'm wondering, and I can't even consider myself going to be for better and not have no proponents. I think you did a great job, especially compared to some of the other utilities.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think it's we can take that advice here. We have smart people in the room here. We'll look into that and ask questions in our side internally and see if the legal ramifications can't do. That's something I can say. But thank you. So is there another question? Okay. So now, once you have your initial service agreement, pay the system cost here. completion documentation here. This helps us to know the close of the project here. So key thing here is certificate of completion that's signed and dated by a local wiring inspector here. Also your one line signed and dated here. And, your commissioning memo, if it's a system, if you know relays involved, require a commissioning memo here. Similar theme here, signed and dated, right? So, it's kind of, keep everyone in mind here that it's record keeping, right? Is we make sure that all the records you provide to us is accurate. So if there's a different date here, different time, it's going to stop the clock here. It's going to put a hole there that we can't, proceed forward there. And we do try to actively try to clear up the queue as best we can. So also Schedule Z, signed and dated with the correct car numbers that Tim mentioned earlier. Pamela Hill will cover this more in detail in her slide. Also, if the immediate inspection is to be called in, so if there's a construction work request and there's identified that you're doing work on your side, it has to be cleared by the local wire inspector. They call in the number, the national number, they provide their PIN number, and what happens from there is that it clears that requirement. So once that clears the requirement, it helps us be able to close out our construction project request. Also, if memory allocation, if you don't get that metering, you can always do a call in the facility, and you can switch back once cap space becomes available. And also, 6 quality pictures here of the utility disconnect, inverters, if it's a pad mounted transformer, any current limiting device, if you where you're tapping into, a breaker, kind of where that connection point is. You want to make sure that you're tapping behind your system. I had the ones where, school in the northern area, they tapped in, ahead of the meter, national grid meter. And like, how come we're not getting power? How come we're not seeing anything? But I guess you're giving us free power pretty much. And the, and the wiring inspector signed off on it. That's a try, we joke at it, but then we had to do a lot of rebuilding. We felt bad. We try to help out and try to correct that. So it's very important there too that provide the wire connection tool. And the quality pictures we get, the more comfortable we feel with who's providing information, right? Because from my mind, if I see something, like, does the person know what I'm talking about? It throws a flag in my mind. Is that additional facility? I like to see everyone, at like a 6th grade level or higher, so when they provide the documentation to us, it makes my life easier. I don't have to spend additional time reviewing. Okay, this person knows it. They're providing what I'm asking for. Great. Check. The next item, go after that. Check. And helps with the process. Helps move these things along faster. So, behind the scenes there. So, we talked about metering here, modifications, billing. Any protections there that are required there. Tina will cover that as well in her section as well. Need for Reliability Committee, ISO New England. We heard a little bit earlier about that from Tim Rowan. Also, if there's any geographical information, anything we need updates, any one lines, if it's our EMS control room, to make sure that, when we update our screens there, that the proper contact information is there and the phone number. So if the control room wants to shut something down or have an outage or something, they have the right information. And I know at times, projects kind of switch back and forth with people. That we should provide an update. If somebody's new involved, we should provide an update so we keep our records accurate. In case of emergencies or with storm restoration activities, it's very important. So then if any internal operating guidance is needed. So if it's a witness testing, you need to have an organization plan. And Hackett will cover that more in his section there, about the post-case. So you can kind of listen more with that. And anything future related, future relay tests needed, annual maintenance, any calibration, insurance tracking as well.
So there, we need to know any changes going into year-end to the quarter. Any new changes, any new requirements from these classes?
I mean, not that I'm aware, but
I just want to mention that we made it clear for customers to make sure that they submit their documentation early October,
in order to be in line for end of the year connection. So we want to make sure that by the end of October, we have those documents reviewed through so that we can move forward with the next step.
I received an email this week stating that, there's a 6-week time for advanced metering preparatory work. What is that? Is that wireless meter?
I'm not sure exactly. Usually advanced meter notice would be ordering the meter, requesting that. From what I latest I heard was that, for a wireless meter, it takes, 3 to 4 weeks there to get that, programmed into the yard. If that's what you're referring to.
See, that's what I thought the price of the 60. I'm not sure what it was.
I mean, I can talk to you on the side there, and kind of go over the specific details.
I found it in the front side of the process, it seems to be really streamlined. But I think when we get to the construction aspect and when it kind of moves into the other departments of the utility, there seems to be somewhat of a lack of continuity when moving through like the metering department or scheduling an outage and also having, I just think this is an area there to kind of coordinate better with the developer to actually use the one outage to perform you guys' upgrades as well as our tie-in function versus kind of having that segmented and that second outage to do the grid upgrades. That cost would then get past the developer.
Yeah.
So there could be kind of a two, for one stone application if there's a little bit more collaboration with the project through the different departments that seem to have their own kind of they're in their own room, so to speak. And they're like, oh, that's that department. That's their department. It's kind of a common theme.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for, we have strategic coordination calls internally with our staff members. We go to their strategy meetings, construction meetings too, so they know, they see the visibility as well too. We're hoping that, over time things get better and they know to come to us, or they can kind of figure out, talk to their team members and say, okay, all right, it's here, what else can be done to combine it? Obviously, we're trying to limit it as much as possible, but the kind of human error comes into play here, and we try to invest to making sure things are seamless. But, it's something to note. We'll take that as a part of action item. And, to see, if you have any in particular, we can probably talk to you on the side there and kind of see what things are facing, and we can kind of see what happened in that situation, how we can address that.
Like specific projects, these
Yeah.
kind of put down passes, tell apart on.
Yeah, exactly. So we can we'll investigate, and that's the whole point of this thing too. We want to get better as a utility, right? As National Grid here, we want to try to serve your needs. So if something you feel is not working right, we'll look at it. Go ahead and look at it. Send us an email, to our sharing box here, whatever particular thing you're facing, or to the project manager there, and we'll look at that and evaluate if if like, hey, did something happen wrong here? Was this on our side? Or is this on customer side? Is any lessons learned from this? So we do take things in advantage there, and over time, we get better. We'll have better programs too to help us manage this as well. And to try and keep everyone aware of that.
Speaking of programs, is there any forecast to actually have a completely online application process and get away from the email system, the paper, check application?
We're working on it in the DG portal. So for the simplified, October 31st?
November 6th.
November 6th, okay. And for our standard, I guess we're looking to kind of roll it out April?
In April timeframe. Yeah, so we're talking about an online application portal. We actually launched it in New York, May 15th. So our sister company in New York has been using, we call it NCAP, that's our acronym for it, but it's a pretty slick online application portal being rolled out November 6th for the simplified applications in New England, and then it's under development for the standard applications. We're targeting right now the April 2018 time frame, but it's going to enable folks not only to submit their applications online, but then to track the progress. That's tricky in there. To see how it's moving through the department.
And so there'll be some automated communications as a result. So looking forward to that. We should have had a bullet in Tim's, talk about recent developments, because that is a fairly recent development, and looking forward to getting that available to folks. And, you know, the comment about the better coordination, you know, National Grid values are about doing the right thing, finding the better way every day. And to that, you know, that's part of the reason we host these workshops is to get that sort of feedback. And I know in the past we have evaluations. We send out the presentation along with the evaluation. So we encourage you to use that as a forum. If not giving us the direct feedback here, it's all those evaluations. I think there's an open-ended question says, you know, what's the National Grid be doing better with the process, right? So take the opportunity to give us that type of feedback because we are trying to way every day. Yeah.
I'm just going to take you back a little ways in the application process. In terms of data enrollment, the application needs criteria impact. You have to be completely through the interconnection application process actually.
Yes. I mean, the pre-application is mandatory for a certain size project, and that's just giving you some very high-level information to help you make that decision when you want to actually submit an application. So,
This is actually a process that a data enrollment process separate from the National Grid process. The application has step one, and then start applying it. That was the data, and then at that, you can do what I
yeah, I think I can't answer that one on but it's actually out there. I guess it's no, but let's find out.
All right, so that's the next one. All right, so as mentioned before, many stakeholders involved, and it's kind of one thing from my perspective here as a project manager here is that one of the things that I have to deal with is coordination, not only internally here with the many stakeholders involved, and we try to make sure everyone's involved on the same page here, understand what's coming and try to streamline this as well, but also for the customer as yourself there. And sometimes too, what I've seen is that for one project, I have multiple people talking to me. With her, one main point of contact and one customer for the lead contractor and also the customer contact as well. So that way we can kind of make sure all the information, is being provided to the next people and you can filter down within your organization. Yeah. So then, for summary here, this is just a high-level review here of the process. Anything project-specific-wise, the rules, that's the way people need to apply. Submit it early and often, and talk to us. Talk to us utility. We want to be, we're trying to help you connect here. So you have to let us know, hey, what is your due dates here? When are you looking to come online live? And we'll help you out and explain that to you. But if you don't tell us and you tell us like a week before, hey, I want to get this, 3-month project connected here, and you have 3 months here, like, no, it's not going to happen. But if you, and you'd be surprised by you lose some financial incentives. So the key thing here is that talk to us early and often. Can't stress that enough there, and we can help guide you. And try to be forthcoming with information. So, and that's as utility can try to meet your time frames and your deadlines. And also you can ask, send any general information, large applications, they want to study if you don't know. And the tariff here, I have a copy of it here. Don't look to be intimidating here. It's like a 150-page document here. So it covers quite a lot of information here. But if you're covering the standard process, you can narrow it down for what you're looking for. And also we have ESB Census Appendix C, a little more smaller here, but some more technical here. And Jeannie will cover that in her part there. Okay. So here's the real contact information here. So the next slide here is just our public fund part, utilities as well. So and yes.
Are you going to send it out to everyone?
Yes, it was so before the seminar was sent out, we can have the seminar again after the seminar, so you have a list of contacts there.
Questions?
It'll be available on the website as well.
Where?
On the Massachusetts business and home DG tariff information page. Interconnection documents, I believe is the title of the page. Yes, we record these and upload them.
Any other final questions here? Great. I think next is I think this is for a break. So
Yeah, so let's be back in about 10 minutes. I think that puts us at
yes, sir.
All right, so as people start to trickle back in here, put that slide back in. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're still growing. We're seeing some turnover here at this point. You're going to meet a few members of my team as part of the presentation. Alex being one of them here, but I wanted to kind of maybe put some new names of faces and some names of faces you may have seen in the past. So again, I'm Will Kern. I'm the manager of New England North, which is Worcester and West, and then this sort of northern part of Massachusetts. So within my team, I'm going to have nine project managers. And then one of them is going to be a screener, right? So as we were talking about the screening process earlier, he's dedicated solely to that. So I think I have a good chunk of my team here. So I was going to kind of, walk around and maybe even CEI members here, just kind of put some names with some faces. So Alex, can you start off again?
Okay. Alex Kriakos. So I'm the basic area north lead for projects, and I do have projects in the central and western area as well.
Hi, Ariella Cohen. I am new, and I will be handling the state class.
All right, so a couple people who aren't in the room right now. Tim Kunlevo, he's managing the complex project in Bay State West. His name should be up here. Also, Shakir, who was actually helping some of you maybe park earlier, right? So he is another new member of the team. He joined us a couple of weeks ago. He's got a good, solid National Grid background, but he's new in this space on the DG side. And then we actually have some additional people starting. I do have one more vacancy we're working on filling now, and we have another project manager, Andrea Agra, starting here in 2 weeks with us, right? So we've had some turnover, which has been good for the people who are moving on. Taka was with us for another couple of months, and he'll be moving on to a more technical role here at National Grid. So just trying to put some names with some faces as people who are managing projects up in this area in the north and in Bay State West. And I don't know if you're keeping count, but the number of people we having working in Bay State West far exceeds the one person we having in Bay State North just because of the sheer volume out west. We have more complex work in Bay State West, which is Worcester to the New York border, than we have anywhere else in New England combined. Right, so a lot of land out there, a lot of solar sites going up, so we do have quite a few people working in that area trying to work through those complex project. So, ask the questions. We have people who know the answers, but bear with some of the newer people that it may not be as quick of an answer as maybe you've gotten from some of the more experienced people in the past. So, no one from Rhode Island is here today. All right. So John Kennedy is my counterpart. He's managing what we consider to be New England South, which is the South Shore, Southeast, the Hopedale area, Brockton area, and then all of Rhode Island he manages. So,
All right, so with that, we'll
so Gene, I think is on that.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Amber. I work in Retail Connection Policy and Standards. So in plain English, we make the technical policies for interconnecting DG to national grid systems. And today I'm going to be talking about some of the technical things that we look at, as well as give you an idea of our ESB 756, Electric Service Bulletin 756, which is the DG interconnection. So first we'll talk about the potential impacts, but we'll only touch on that because I know Alex already covered it. What are the code standards and technical requirements for interconnecting DG on the national grid system? The system modeling studies that we do, and then some things that we see on a regular basis like transformer limits, radio versus secondary networks, and EV0. So, as you may have already heard, interconnecting DG is not something that you just do without telling you the utility. There are potential impacts when you connect that DG to safety, reliability, and power quality. So definitely make sure that you're keeping us aware of what kind of projects you're installing, because we don't want to have situations where you're either impacting safety, reliability, or impacting the power quality of your own service or your neighbors. So things that I've looked at in my career, most particularly increased fault current levels and what we do with those. So I do have a protection engineering background, so if anybody has questions on that type of topic after the discussion, we can talk about that after, be it witness tests, effective grounding, rotating machines. I'm happy to talk about those things after in a bit more detail. So there are a number of regulatory rules that you need to follow when you connect distributed generators, and those are in part listed here. When we're looking at state jurisdictional projects, we're looking at the DG tariff from Massachusetts, and that's NAGCD 1320, so there's a link there for your convenience. And the ones for New York and Rhode Island are also there for your convenience as well. This is these projects in other states. So then, the IEEE standards, like industry standards, for interconnecting DG, they include IEEE 1547, which is the standard for interconnecting DG onto electric power systems. That, as you may know, is going through a major revision right now, in particular to help DGs help with ride-through of bulk system events. I know Tim touched on that earlier. There are bulk system events that both operators have seen. American FERC are really aware because of, like for example, if you Google Blue Cut Fire, you can see where a large amount of distributed generators, or in some cases just inverter-based generation connected to transmission, there was a fault, and that disrupts system stability, and the DG, they're not really sure, as far as I understand, they're not really sure what the DG run distribution did. They might have even stopped and just sat there and said, oh, we're fine, and then come back on. We don't know, or at least I don't know from reading the report. And then they had a lot of generation drop off. And when you have an event that's already dragging down the voltage and frequency on the system, if your system that you're installing is there to help keep it up by meeting these new requirements for ride-through, the new IEEE 1547 requirements when they come out, then you're helping provide bulk system stability by keeping your generator on there. And I know that if anybody's done a project where you have the adjustable end of frequency set point, I try to tell people, keep in mind this setting is important. If you set it to trip too fast, you're potentially going to keep your project from helping if the whole system is going down, and then we're just headed to a blackout. So a lot of the revisions that you'll see in 1547 are to help us avoid going to a big blackout because we have so much heat on the system. So in addition to IEEE 1547, you have IEEE 519 for harmonics, and then 1453 for flickers, and then the C37.90 series. This is an important series of standards because if you can just keep in your mind C37.90 and utility grade, we're all set. Because we have a lot of frequent questions of what do you mean by utility grade? Really, we want to make sure that you're meeting the requirements in IEEE 1547 to make sure that that relay has the surge and transient withstand requirements of the C37.90 series, basically to make sure that it's built as if we build our own equipment so that it can withstand what it will see when it's connected to the power system. So then, after C37.90 and other industry standards, we also have product standards. Any distributed generator that is UL 1741 listed is going to have a bit of a simpler process when they're connecting because it's going through certain islanding tests and other checks. So if you're seeing that you have something that's UL 1741 or very soon UL 1741 SA, if you're familiar with Rule 21 in California, and have UL 1741 SA starting to show up on the inverters, that's something you definitely want to look for. And then you have the NFPA standards, such as the NEC code, which applies to your premises wiring, basically after the PCC. So just more on that premises wiring. You can go through these on your own time. And then here's another drawing that you can review. It talks about basically the point of common coupling with a service point. We'll take care of anything that's above that. That's under the NESC. And then anything that's on your side of that, that's under NEC and the NESC Rule 11. So you can use this when you're trying to figure out, well, what's on my side, what's on the utility side. All right, so if you are connecting a standard distribution service, every standard distribution service requires service protection or service equipment, which is basically a disconnect and your main overcurrent protection. That also pertains to distributed generation, so that's a similarity between the two. And also between the two, we need to make sure that the billing meters are secure, so that we're properly billing, or in some cases paying for the generation that's out there. And then we need to make sure that our interface points, that everybody's clear on where the PCC is and who owns what, so that we don't have potential safety and operational problems. So then when you're looking at parallel generation, there are other things to keep in mind. Of, it's up to the utility to determine the voltage and the interconnection point. You may propose something, but we do reserve the right to say, we can't fit you on this feeder. We need to install an express feeder, or we need to upgrade a transformer size, or change what type of service you have, depending on the size of the generation. So keep that in mind as you're applying. And as you know, prior notification of approval from the utility is required before connecting generation. So, local rules. My favorite, ESB 756. This is how I start my summer, which for me is good because I like standards and things, so that works out well for me. National Grid ESB 756 is part of the ESB 750 series. So, if you're currently familiar with only 756, take a look around at the 750 series. There are requirements for primary service interconnection. There are requirements for less than or greater than 600 volt connections. And these are requirements that, as we saw in the last slide, are standard for both load and generation customers. So ESP 756 is the requirements that are specific to generation. So as you may know, we have, you can go to the next slide, we have appendices to that ESB 756 document. So you have the main document, which is just an introductory document, and then you have Appendix A, which is for your large generator interconnections that are basically in the FERC jurisdiction. Then you have Appendix B for New York, Appendix C for Rhode Island, which we have here, and then Appendix D for Rhode Island. If you look on our website, all of them are in the same document. My suggestion would be, if you know that you're not going to connect on the transmission, under the transmission tariff, then print out ESB 756 itself, and then your appropriate appendix. I have one of the appendices that I carry around because I like to know what section is which. So that would be my suggestion if you wanted to go through the ESB. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the purpose of ESB 756 is to make sure that you're aware of the general requirements, especially the technical requirements, and some of our recommendations for interconnecting parallel generators to the national grid system. Now keep in mind that if you're interconnecting a standalone generator that is never going to be paralleled with the utility, then we wouldn't expect those requirements to apply. If you're ever going to parallel with the utility, then you definitely need to look at ESB 756. We're also looking in ESB 756 to make sure that you're complying with other requirements that the distribution utility has from other parties, such as this NERC standard here. As I said before, we're trying to make sure that we have ensured the electric reliability and security of the company EPS. And then we're also looking to refer you to the applicable FERC or state tariff regulations pertaining to parallel generation. So, can I get a show of hands who went to or who attended online the outreach sessions for the ESB updates recently? Anybody? Okay. So, we have slides for those that if they weren't already, I know they'll be posted on the website, where we have a bit more in-depth than what I have here about the ESB revision. We did some outreach to show, here are the sections that changed, and probably the most important slide is going to be coming up where it's the next table. So, what we're doing with the ESB is, we recently updated it. There were some major changes in the look of it. If you do work in, 3 of our jurisdictions, I really hope that it helps you a lot to know that 7.6.12 in ESB 756B is the same as 7.6.12 in C as in D for New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. So that can help you see with the tariff. There is definitely tariff differences between each jurisdiction, but the technical requirements are largely the same. So hopefully that organization that we did should help if you're working throughout jurisdictions. We also have developed an annual revision process. We have interim amendments that may come out. We are doing those internally on a regular basis. We have a couple of changes that we're looking to make to update the ESB and interim. And then if there's any errata, you would find those on our website after those interim amendments are made. And then once a year, we plan to update ESB 756. And typically that will be published in June. So those are the major changes. You just look at the next slide. So that's it. So the technical requirements, there are some clarifications to the technical requirements. You'll find that they've largely remained the same. We're really just trying to make sure that we're explaining it as well as we can and clarifying things that we've had either done on a case-by-case basis, maybe not had in the ESB, and then we spell it out in the ESB. I'm thinking in my head, the monitoring and control section has some changes that were made to it that were basically, we were doing this on a case-by-case basis, and here we spelled it out. And then in the islanding section, which is 7.6.12, for those of you that were at this presentation last year or early this year, we definitely talked about changes to our islanding policies, and that's in section 7.6.12. That's consistent for each of the jurisdictions. And it spells out how we'll do the screens for risk of islanding. depending on the size of the project and what's on the feeder, and it also spells out what the requirements are for each of those streams, either caching or failing. We incorporated the company's latest best practices, trying to implement IEEE 1547A. The amendment came out in 2014, and that coincides with what Jim talked about earlier with the ride-through requirements. All of that is permitted by 1547A, but if you're only looking at 1547, it really wasn't necessarily permitted. So, and like I said, we also updated the monitoring control section, the unintentional islanding, and also we try to clarify the effective grounding section. You'll find that there's a list of acceptable transformer configurations in the ESP. And can I get a show of hands? How many people do projects over the 500 kilowatts? All right, what kind of crowd? Cool. So, plan. If you're interconnecting to a distribution circuit, you need to provide for effective grounding. Your inverter typically, I haven't seen an inverter yet that can be grounded on its own, just connecting the thing up by its own. It's just the way that inverters work. You need an external ground source, whether it be your wide ground delta intertime transformer or an external grounding bank. So all of that is discussed in the ESP and the effective grounding and transformer sections. So let's go to the next slide. And this slide, I suggest printing it out. If you were very familiar with the past ESP, this should help you as a quick reference for what section. This actually is very similar to the impact studies. Jim Ryan, I don't know if you know Jim Ryan, but it was his idea to come up with, or at least he's the one that started this, and we just made here's what it used to be and here's what it is now based on what's listed in the impact study for your reference and for our own reference as we're training new people. So, like I said, 7.6.12 is unintentional islanding. You'll definitely want to look at section 7.3 for effective grounding in your transformers. Section 7.4, your manual generator disconnect. 7.5, your interrupting device requirements. And my favorite, all of section 7.6 is all of your relaying and the associated equipment with that. So this I hope you'll find this helpful as you move from the previous version of the ESP to the new version of the ESP. And you'll see that charts, if you attend in New York or Rhode Island, that charts like this will look very, very similar. So, on the next slide, so one thing that I want to talk about is the system modeling studies. And I just saw Matt's eyes go, whoa, because yeah, this is all the kind of things that we look at when we look at an impact study. We need to make sure that when we're connecting the generator, especially if it's a large generator, we're looking at all of these pieces. We want to make sure that you're not impacting the voltage of nearby customers. We want to make sure that you're not flickering somebody's lights. I want to make sure that all of my protections still work and that the protections at your site are going to actually trip for faults on the EPS. So, in general, looking at fault detection and the impacts that your system will have on the currents that are coming into our system for each type of fault. And then we're looking at risk of islanding. And these are all the things that we look at in an impact study. So that's why we take the 55 business days to do this kind of analysis, because it takes a lot of thought and care to make sure that we know whether you need one recloser, two reclosers, or if you just need an upgrade to a section of line, or if you need an entire new feeder. So these are the kinds of things that we look at when we look at an impact study. And I just kind of talked through this slide already. So one thing that we'll find when you're interconnecting typically smaller projects is that even with a small project, either your project alone or in combination with that of your neighbors, we start to overload transformers. And when you overload a distribution transformer, you're going to need to replace it with something that's bigger. So we'll take a look at the nameplate rating, and if the DG is exceeding the nameplate rating, we need to replace the transformer with something larger. You can see section 7.3 of ESP 756C for some reasons why we might replace the distribution transformer. If you needed to have more information about that, or you can also ask your CEI person as well. So, can I get a show of hands of who is aware of secondary networks, just networks in general? I see people say, Sahir has entered the room, and he is familiar with underground, right? Yeah, so that's his previous experience. Sahir and I were in the graduate development program when we both started at Grid, so he'll have a lot of supervisor, a lot of field experience to take the CEI, so that'll be good to see CEI. So anybody that's not familiar with networks, if you're connecting generation, typically within a city, you definitely need to be thinking about, even for like 10 kilowatt maybe, am I connecting to a network? Because our radio distribution systems there are certain complexities to them, but they're really not that complex. A radio distribution system, you have the substation and power flows outward. That's how we design the system. When you're looking at networks, you've done that twice, and you've interconnected everything. And when we designed that system, we never planned for DG because we didn't expect it to have people that wanted to connect DG on a network. So the issue with that is we have an equipment called network protectors, and these network protectors are only designed for power flow in one way. So when you have a distributed generator connecting to that system, you cause the potential for backfeed through a network protector at certain sizes and at much smaller sizes than with large projects on radio distribution circuits. So if you're interconnecting in the areas of Worcester, Lynn, or Broxton, definitely look at the National Grid website. We have maps of where the area networks are. If you look at ESP 756 Exhibit 2, we have the links. You can just click right on the link for the networks, and we also have information on networks in the ESP itself. So definitely look at the maps. And if you're not sure looking at the map, definitely talk to CEI and make sure that you're not on a network system before you interconnect, because we may be able to interconnect it, but it will be a big study. You may end up having to run a line from somewhere else that's outside the network. It could get really complicated, so just don't plan for a small project on a network to go in simply. It definitely takes more thought because of the way that system was designed. And that system was designed for higher reliability. So there is a reason for it. It just wasn't dealt with distributed generation in mind. So another issue that we see is something that's a common thread throughout this presentation today, which is DG saturation. We have a lot of substations where we've exceeded screens for risk of island, the 67% of mid-load screens, where we've exceeded the screens for 3D0, which is transmission ground fault protection, where you're basically going towards, you're capable of backfeeding into transmission, and you're also capable of overloading your distribution circuit. So if you're capable of overloading your distribution circuit because of DG saturation between either your project and its size, or the combination of multiple projects on that feeder, be aware that that type of study, will probably require, it may even require a detailed study. If you need to interconnect to an express feeder, or we have us build a home new feeder to accommodate the generation that you're looking to add to an already overloaded circuit, it will take more time, and it does take more thought. So keep that in mind as you see a lot of DG on feeders. So then, this is just an idea of what the PV impact can be on the load profile. You're shifting your peaks, and you're reducing your normal load at certain times of the day. But if you look, the peaks have just shifted over a little bit. They're still there. You're not really smoothing it out necessarily. You're just shifting the peaks. So, and then we'll go on. So, as you know, intermittent resources as a cloud covers all of the PVs and then passes by. You're going to get dips in output, which result in potential for flicker, potential for other voltage concerns that are distribution planning and asset management engineers will look through as they look through your study. So, 3V0. Who wants to know about 3V0? Can I get a show of hands on that? So, 3V0 is transmission ground fault protection. It's basically to make sure that your ungrounded or delta high side transformer. Now, keep in mind, ungrounded means either delta or ungrounded Y. Or in some cases, just where you don't have continuity where you can see the transmission system. So basically, to simplify it, if you have a delta high side transformer, if you look through the sequence networks of how the DGs on the distribution system feed into a fault on transmission, they can't see what's going on the transmission system. Since they can't see what's going on the transmission system, we need to install zero sequence overvoltage protection, which is it's basically looking to see quantities at the transmission side where you have a shift in your neutrals and make sure that you trip off all of that generation from the low side of that distribution substation for that ground fault. So on a typical system, you'll have maybe one or two ends, and then you'll have your distribution substation with your delta high side transformer. The remote ends will trip because they're designed to trip for faults on the transmission system. Then what happens is your distributed generation takes and shifts the neutral out of that transformer up. And it's also energizing the ground fault, and it's raising that potential on the entire line. So as the distributed generation is sourcing that, it looks just like load for the distribution system. All the DGs, I'm serving load. It's a fault. And they just can't tell. So that's why we install 3V0. And we have screens where we look for that. Where we built a little bit of margin in for smaller DGs. So we tried to make it so that like a 10 kilowatt system is not going to throw it. But the larger systems are definitely, we'll look at it. Okay, you sell the 3V0 screens, we need to install 3V0. And what that is, it's a set of CCVTs, and they're huge. I have no sense of scale, I've only seen pictures, but I haven't stood next to them. But they're these big voltage sensors, that capacitively coupled voltage transformers. And those go to a 59N relay, which we'll then use to trip all of the feeder breakers, so that we trip all of that DG off and de-energize the ground fault. So we're doing two things with that 3V0. We're making sure that we're not overvolting equipment for too long, and we're also making sure that we're not leaving ground faults on the transmission system forever to potentially become a safety issue where somebody walks up to the line. So when you install these, when these systems are required, if you see a screen that says 3V0 is required and it's not installed, the DG proposer is going to have to pay for that system or help pay for that system if there's already projects in progress that might be cost sharing. Thank goodness for cost sharing. That helps a lot. I hope. I think it sounds more fair. I try not to get into cost too much. And then it does take time to install 3V0. It's typically like a year, 18 months, something in that time frame. I'm not giving exact time frames for every project, but it takes a significant amount of time to install 3V0. So keep that in mind if you know that there's a lot of DG on the system, especially on the entire distribution substation. So we'll look at 67% of the load when we have the heaviest loaded feeder out. So if you have a 3-circuit substation, and you look at all the DG on just 3 of them, and you've got to look at that when you're looking at perhaps the DOER information that's available. You could think about that when you're thinking about 3V0. One of the other things that we typically talk about at these seminars is direct transfer trip, because that's another high cost item. I forgot to mention cost. We're talking on the cost of a number and a couple of zeros, and then another 3 zeros,
Three V zero.
for 3V0 and for DTP as well. With direct transfer trip, the company recently made a stance that's in the EFD, that's spelled out with all the details of, it's gotta be UL 1741, it can't be voltage regulating, that kind of information, where we've implemented reclosed blocking, and basically said we're gonna put more trust in the UL 1741 test, for inverter-based generation. For rotating machines, you'll notice that the EFD reads 33% of the minimum load requires DCP. And that's in part just because rotating machines tend to be more stable, and they also tend to be the ones that get damaged. I've been told by inverter manufacturers, my device isn't going to get damaged. I'm like, what about your neighbors? What about your neighbors that you're holding up? But with rotating machines, the rotating machine itself puts the same damage. So you'll see that we still require direct transfer trip. Keep in mind when you're looking at rotating machine projects, or projects that are using some of the advanced functions of UL 1741SA, that we are going to evaluate it at 33% of the minimum load, and you may require direct transfer trip. And that's just due to the stability of those types of systems and how they're set up, and how they need to be protected for islands. So keep that in mind when you're installing rotating machines, and voltage regulating either inverters for PV or inverters for energy storage.
Is the broken delta PC or anything about the
For what?
Three V zero?
A broken delta absolutely would be. That would be typically what we'd use. That would be 3 PTs,
Right.
and then you would just break this connection here and connect it up to your relay.
That's the
But-
relatively inexpensive line.
Not on transmission.
Are you talking about?
I'm talking about transmission. Yeah. So at a distribution substation that was built with the delta high side or built with an ungrounded high side, in some substations you may not even have the space for these huge devices that need to go in to sense that voltage. So it's a lot of time and thought that needs to go into installing that type of system. So this is my last slide. If there are any other questions, the number in my head, it is not a solid number by any means, but just the number in my head from one project was $300,000.
Okay.
And then,
It's a lot of zeros.
yeah. So, transfer trip is similar numbers, but this is for 3V0. For 3V0, if there are multiple projects coming on at the same time, there may be the opportunity for cost sharing. If anybody wants to talk about cost sharing with that a little bit, anybody?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
This is cost sharing?
Yeah, so, we only will cost share the project when there's any customer who pays 100% for the upgrade, right? So as soon as we have that customer, then whoever is next in the pipeline moving forward, will be co-shared. They'll be given their co-shared value to pay for that upgrade. So, but unfortunately, we can't co-share the project where the project in front of them triggered it, but we don't have that 100%. Sometimes, they pay half of the payment for that upgrade. We still require to get 100% the second customer until we have that 100%. Then we'll start, co-share.
I've seen some language in there speaking to telemetry. Can you speak a little bit about that and some of the costs associated with the project that might trigger that?
So there is a monitoring and control system section in the ESD that can go through the monitoring and control requirements. If you're looking at, typically, but not always, a 1 megawatt or greater site, we would be looking at efficiency reclosures. Keep in mind that IEEE 1547 is also updating requirements for communication with DG, and that's because a lot of utilities are finding that they need real-time communication with the DGs to say, hey, you need to ramp down because we've got problems on the circuit. So if you're required to install a recloser, that's on the order of, what number do you guys usually get for that?
480. Typically
Typically not. 40 kilo. 480 kilowatts typically does not trigger a closure.
Close to 1 megawatt.
Yeah, typically 1 megawatt. I meant the price, but yeah.
Oh.
Typically it's triggered around a megawatt. There are sections in 7.6.12 where it will, for smaller projects over 50 kilowatts, it may be required. And it's based on the island. But we use the PCC recloser where it's required to monitor your site, and to be able to operate that device from our EMS system is extremely helpful to our operators. If they need to make changes on a circuit or do something on the circuit, when they're doing switching, they can just use that PCC recloser to trip the generation offline when they do what they need to do. So you can look through the monitoring and control section.
When a 3 to 0 is going, how many additional megawatts? Like you talk about how much more to do.
Ooh.
Say that 8 megawatts for this.
So when it comes to 3V0, that, as long as you're not overloading your distribution circuits, you're probably not going to have problems until you get to the close to the transformer nameplate of the substation. So 3V0 is really the big nut crack. Once that's installed, there is a point where you'll have more generation than what you have of your nameplate of the substation transformer, and you need to consider that. But there is a section in there where if there may not be significant upgrades to the substation.
That's going to be published somewhere when you get to that point where there's frequent anywhere to reference that?
At present, it's not published, because typically the impact studies are performed for a customer. That customer paid for it, and we'll give them the results since they paid for it. When you do the screening memo, state what 3.0 is already in place.
No, they're not.
Thank you.
General comment. On your substations, your transformers are large transformers. Are they on a distribution system or grounded or not?
On the transmission side of it.
I'm talking about the distribution.
So on the distribution system, if you have a delta high side and a Y grounded low side, then you've got all grounded distribution systems. They're multi-grounded distribution. Typically, if we I've seen a couple substations that were maybe older where they have grounded transformers so that they have a ground source. There's typically anything 13 kV and below in New England you'll see is your project will need to be effectively grounded because the circuit is typically multi-grounded. Keep in mind there's always one-offs because every utility is made up of little utilities, and I'm thinking of some in New York that are not grounded circuits. So keep that in mind, but the typical circuit, your 13 kV class circuits, your 12 kV class circuits, they're going to be multi-grounded circuits because they have a ground source at the substation, either through the transformer configuration or through the ground platform that was added.
So in that case, surely your protection applies to all ground faults on a feeder. Therefore, why do you require feeder verify that you need a downstream?
Because it's protecting for transmission ground faults, not distribution ground faults. So the thing is,
This is a transmission problem, not a
Yeah.
distribution problem.
yeah. And if anybody's got technical questions after, or if you want to go page to the ESB, we can talk through it a bit.
Yeah, we can probably send links to the stuff that we sent out this presentation. So just real quick before Hakan comes up here, so we're gonna hand out a quick survey, get some feedback on this. We are looking to make some changes to this meeting, and how we're going about it. So I just would like to get some feedback from the group here. The reason we're doing it on paper is because after we had the last one in July, we sent it out as part of the presentation, and 0 people responded. So we're going to force you to leave this room by filling out your invitation to us. Yeah, right. So that's pretty cool. How about that?
More people are the paper kind of people.
My name is Marco Patrician. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm going to cover the post-ISA coordination process. I know there was a lot of information already provided, so I don't want to overwhelm you guys even further. I'll try to take it as easy as I can, explaining in a language that is accessible. So everything after impact study is in this slide pretty much. So the next step after the impact study, we do an interconnection service agreement, and that's called ISA. That's the official agreement between the national grid and the customer for the interconnection. So that document, I see some familiar faces that I work with, so I'm sure they're familiar, but I don't know if most of you guys are. In a complex world, it has 7 attachments that we go through. We explain the system, what the system consists of in the first paragraph, and then in the second attachment we talk about system modification on customer side, on our distribution system and our substation level, and then there is a attachment 3 where we talk about cost, and then there is also the schedule, right? So once the agreement is executed, the customer is given 120 business days to make the first construction payment. That's pretty much the payment that we use to start the design process for the project. Once we have that payment in, we will assign a designer. We'll do kickoff meetings internally to make sure that all the stakeholders involved understand the scope of work, the schedule, the timeline, and then we'll have a designer assigned to the project. He will we'll go to the site, meet with the customer, with the developer, do his sketches, and then doing typically the design takes, I don't know, maybe depending on the project complexity, but 20-25 weeks, plus minus, obviously. At that point, once the design is done, we will have the construction grade estimate. Once that's done, we can already pretty much procure the equipment for the project, which is that there's a box there where we make sure that all the permits and easements is required are secured, and also all the procurement is already done. So once that step is done, then we will pretty much, just two boxes, engineering and construction, kind of can go together. Once the equipment is secured, we have the recloser and primary meter is being worked on. There are settings that we install on the recloser. There are radios involved with the recloser to make sure that that process is also going through while we're doing construction. So basically, once the construction is done and all the recloser and all the major equipment is ready, we'll hang it, we'll do field commissioning, and then we'll be ready for testing the site. We call that energization and testing. This is where we do relay testing, RTU testing, and then the next slide we'll talk about more about the witness test. You want to go to the next slide? So the entire process after the ISA can take up to a year or whatever that time frame is given to you in the Interconnection Service Agreement Attachment 7. Typically, all the complex projects can be anywhere from 9 months to 15 months, 18 months. If there is a substation work involved, obviously Jeannie mentioned that it's a long installation, so it could take you more than a year to install if it's a brand new installation. Obviously, if the upgrade is already in place, then it's a cost sharing. We don't have to worry about that timeline. But witness testing, so the main thing here is to make sure that you guys understand we need to see those documents early, right? So for us to be able to review them. As I mentioned earlier, for end of the year rush, we made it clear for the customers to submit us their documentation early now, right? So we said, please send us the documents by October, so we'll have that reviewed by October 1st. So that way, we can kind of build our, resources around it. So kind of understand how many projects we have in the pipeline so we can connect by the end of the year. That's the busiest time, as Will already mentioned, for us. So just make sure to submit the witness test documents. We'll review it. Once you have the documents, we'll review it within 10 business days, and then we'll come back to you with some comments. And then once we have your revisions, another 5 days we'll take to make sure that everything is caught up. Then we'll do pretty much coordination call, discuss if there is any outstanding items that needs to be corrected before we go to the witness test. But once that's done, we also talk about the logistics of the witness test. We kind of ask you guys to tell us the dates, preferred dates that you want to test the site. Then we'll do our internal coordination to make sure we have resources to come out and test the site. Technician usually comes out and witnesses the testing that your testing company performs. Day of the witness test, as I said, we're doing relay testing, functional chip test, in-service checks, generator, inverter, relay test. Sometimes that can be done in 1 day. Sometimes it can be done in 2 days. I always book a rain date with my witness test date. In case there is a rain, there's a weather issue, or there is an issue in an equipment, or something is not working properly, they have time to fix it, or we have another try to go and check because of the weather. Typically, if the project has only one relay, it's maybe a couple hours of work, there, but there's always some issues that you never accounted for, right? So that's why I always try to, schedule that rain date. Once the test is done, we have our engineer, Jeannie's group, review it and make sure that the results are acceptable. Once the results are reviewed and acceptable, then we'll go through completion documentation, make sure that all the final documents are received and acceptable. There is a checklist in our website you guys can follow. Then we'll make sure that the meter is set to replace. Sometimes there is no meter. Sometimes there is an existing meter. So as you know, there are 2 types of interconnection. Independent power producers, where there is no load behind them, and then there is behind the meter when you have load. So those projects that don't have the independent power producers, the only time they can get energized is the day of the witness test. So prior to that, there is no, you have to supply your own power to test or commission your equipment prior to the witness test. So when I sent witness test documents earlier, there is a checklist in our website. What are those documents they were looking for? Witness test procedure. There's a template on what you want to kind of follow the format wise, and then there's an energization plan that we need. As-built 1-line, 3-line, and then the test doc, the pre-test documents, right? So we want to make sure that you did your pre-testing, everything's working good, and you guys ready to move forward. Sometimes customers say, we're ready, let's perform the witness test. We go to the witness test, coordinate all the resources, and then they're not ready. We see that, we just wasted time and resources. So that's why I want to make sure that you guys provide us all the documentation. We review it, make sure that everything is in place before we can schedule that witness test. Witness test will be scheduled only when we have all the documents accepted, and also when all the construction is complete on our side and on your side. When I said on our side, it means, all the overhead construction is done, all the substation work is done, and also the recloser is already hanged, control boxes, office and field commission. That way, we're already ready, everything is done. So that's the only time when we can schedule the witness test and go to the testing. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So the key items, I already talked through most of this already, but once the results are back, we have 5 days to review it, and then 5 to 15 business days to set the bidirectional meter. Usually it's very quick. Once we have the witness test successfully passed, we'll schedule the meter set right after that. It takes a couple of days to do it. And then we will make sure that the billing is correct, account is coded. After that, all the documentation, final documentation is in place. Then we'll send you the authorization to connect, so-called PTO letter, once everything is in place. After that, I think that's the end of the process. We still will be with the project involved in case there are any issues with the already connected interconnections. Some customers call me and explain that they're getting tripped, and we'll kind of investigate as we go. But that's pretty much the end of the process there. I don't know if you guys have any question. I know it's too quick of a rundown, but any.
Is there any way to let the secondary injection testing of relays on the witness side? Because we can pre-calibrate, and that says that defines the relay. And then on the day you do function testing, that saves a lot of
time on our side or on your side.
Because
the relay is operating.
I understand that, but that's what it says. When you provide a calibration report, you're doing a calibration for the relay itself. And then once you do the function testing, you're basically showing that an undervoltage will give you a flip. It's not the time that's 88%. With install, that's what we do. But National Grid doesn't allow it.
Yeah,
It saves a lot of coordination between the not as a secondary injection. The third-party testing company is what I'm talking about. And to get an undervoltage on a relay, you just open the brake or the fluid or something like that. You simulate it. But to actually have a defined 88% undervoltage to test the relay and calibrate it is a waste of time. I can understand that if you're doing a substation, 10 megawatt system that you're talking about 100 kilowatts, it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
It's a question I asked before, and I haven't really had no.
I think a question offline, can you maybe feedback to
Any other questions on both sides in coordination? The only thing I forgot to mention is just make sure, I think Alex already mentioned this, but another key item here. Did I miss this by the way? So just make sure that municipal inspection is called in. Some customers submit all the documents, everything is reviewed, construction is complete, and then the day of the witness test, we find out that the inspector never called and cleared the municipal inspection. So there is this document called certificate of completion where the wiring inspector signs off on it and dates it, right? So that's one of the responsibilities that he has to do with us. The other one is also he has to call in that customer service 1-800 number, service number, and make sure that he provides the PIN and clear the initial inspection. That inspection is not clear in our system. I don't have control over that. So I can't just partially complete in order to go to the next step. So none of the overhead people or technicians will go out and test it if that is not still pending in our system. So just make sure that inspectors call in. Sometimes they say they did, but they never did. So just I don't know. That's another thing that you guys want to always closely monitor.
Can you set up a system where they can just go online, put the number in, and have a printout for this verification versus the telephone system?
Well, there is a form they can fill out also and email it to us, but that's another option.
I think that the phone system is automated all in and keep the construction compared to sending an email. It's an automated system. It's an ADR. It's not someone talking on the phone or something like that. I think that step is very critical because it will not allow unless you install the operating like credit for the bill.
Yeah, it will delay. Any other questions? Please portion. All right.
Where are you from?
From here.
Where's the origin of the name?
Travel Hill here, we'll talk about the first floor walkthrough. So it's kind of very critical here at the end of your project here, activate an authority connect. Pam will cover that aspect of it so you guys can aware of it. Thanks, Pam.
Right, so it's going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to go over some examples of what your bill is going to look like. So if you can go to the next slide. So it's a few things to consider. How much is your net metering credit worth? So if you export during the month, then you will get a credit. So the credit depends on the rate of the host account. The rates are obviously determined by the demand of your facility. So your net metering credit is different for a Class 2 or for a Class 3 facility. For a Class 2 facility, it's a combination of distribution, transmission, transition, and the standard offer service. And Class 3 is all of the above without the distribution portion. So what will this look like on your bill? I have a few examples and a few slides. So your export is going to be showing up on the metered usage section, and the dollar amount shows up in the delivery services. Your calculation depends on your rate, the class, and your load zone. So depending on whatever rate your host account is on, it could look different on different bills. If you have a few different facilities, the bills might not all look exactly the same. And also, one thing that's not covered in here yet, but eventually we will be having some calculations added to this for the market net metering credits for new solar facilities. So we don't have any examples of that yet, but maybe at the next seminar we'll have that information. Okay, so calculations, I have 3 different calculations to show you. Calculation 1, 2, and 3, this sort of covers what the calculations are, but we can just go to the first calculation. So this is what your bill will look like if you're a qualifying facility, 60 kW or less. You would get your credits on your bill, and
you'll see on there, obviously the meter usage, and you get the ISO clearing price. So if you're below 60 kW or less, you're credited through your bill, but it usually takes about an additional month before you get that bill because it's the average monthly price. So you tend to be a month behind in your billing if you're bill through your account. This is for calculation 2 for a G2 account. So this is a net metering credit that includes all 4 pieces, the transmission, transition, distribution, and the basic service. As you see, you still bill your demand charges separately, so that'll just be a separate line on your bill. Same calculation, this is just for small, commercial, or residential. Again, you see your generation and your net metering credit, which includes those 4 pieces. G3, a time of use account, is a little bit different. So you'll see a row that says net metering credit other, and that's the transmission, transition, and basic service credit. The distribution is separated based on the peak and the off-peak rate. So this is for a Class 3 facility. Because there's no distribution charges included in the Class 3 credit, it will just show up on a G3 account or any other account just as one line item. So there's no breakdown on that one. So Schedule Z. Schedule Z is what we use to allocate your credits from your host account to your target account. It's usually we ask that you submit it around the time of your witness test. What we need to do is review that for the target accounts to make sure they're in the same load zone, make sure the accounts are active. There's a lot of back and forth with customers to get these, get them final and to get the credits transferred. And we only transfer on a percentage basis. We don't transfer dollar amounts. So you would like to know when you can see your first transfer of credit. So the first net metering credit will not appear until the month following the first bill after you receive your PTO. Each month when your host account is read and the net export is calculated, you'll get the net metering credits on that account. Your target customers might not see that credit for a month because depending on the different billing cycles, we have 20 different billing cycles. So if your host account bills today and your target account bills today, then that customer is not going to see their credit until the following month. Did you have a credit? Last question? Oh, okay. I thought you were looking at me. So frequently asked questions. Well, this is just sort of going to cover fiscal background. Sorry. On the host account and the target account, you'll see just a dollar amount. It doesn't give you a breakdown of what is transferred where. That's my hope and dream for you all that we can provide that someday, but right now we don't provide that on our bill. Okay. So you're allowed to change your Schedule D twice a year. And we try to apply that Schedule D within one billing cycle. Depending on how many target customers you have, it's pretty labor intensive to review all the target customers, make sure they're in the same load zone, make sure their accounts are active. So on the next slide, it's going to show you what it will actually look like on the bill. So the host customer is going to show a charge with a debit to the account, which is transferring their credits off. And the bottom section is just showing you what your target customer's bill will look like, so they'll just see a flat credit amount.
Is there any chance that this would be automated at some point so that the schedule doesn't have to keep up manually faxed in? It would be done online or then just expedite?
That would be wonderful. We're currently working on a portal, and that is something that we're hoping to incorporate in the portal. It's not in the scope of it right now, but definitely on our wish list. Sure.
How do you define a load zone?
The load zone is determined, so we have maps on our website, but most towns are in a specific load zone. There's a few towns that are dual load zones. It's also on each customer's bill. So if you have your target customers or your off-takers and they give you a copy of their bill, on the bill it does say what load zone they're in. If you provide us customers that it's in a different load zone, we'll just, go back and forth with you, letting you know that we can't transfer those accounts.
Next technology for 100 net meters, is that allowed at all?
Multiple field types?
Yeah.
And you're talking from the net
TV.
So if you had a combination of CHD and UDP high voltage meter, that
opportunity to look at free trade. If you have plan one, it's a regulation, it's a regulation, right? If we go by the tariff says that renewable energy is
It's called the billing rate too. So if your net metering or queue up, right, you're under a different billing rate. So then, for an actual perspective, well, how do we know who's doing what? So then, hence, we need two separate meters. Hence, Pam will talk about, how the breakdown of that will be.
Did you have a question?
Just where in the building does it show the load zone?
I don't actually think I
On the
have
first page on the left side.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
SE or any.
Yeah, it'll
say
say,
like Westmont or CMOS in that blue,
Oh,
that's the shaded blue area.
yeah, have.
It's actually where the cycle is also. So you can see
Yeah,
the
no,
cycle
they
there.
usually show different ways, every customers, what they show residential and, okay, thank you.
So this is just an example of a Schedule Z. I'm not going to read through it all, but it just shows you what needs to be filled out. Some important things to note is that you want to make sure that your host customer matches the billing customer's name. We'll send that back to you if that doesn't match. So if your host customer is Sam Hill, but your account says Voltage, they need to match. So we'll send that back. You need to make sure the account number is correct, and every time you change the host customer name, the account number changes. So that's something that you want to be aware of. And then, you can just go through and read through what needs to be filled out for the Schedule Z. And on the next page, down here on the right, this is where you fill in your target customers. So you just want to make sure that you have your customer's name, address, and their account number, along with the allocation that you want transferred to that customer. And
we should be really calling this information on the customer. Sometimes that like what you see, electrical,
right. And we do have a lot of people. You can transfer, in Massachusetts, you can transfer net metering credits to any customer that is within the same load zone as you and within the same operation.
Yeah.
You can transfer credits to anyone that lives in Massachusetts, in national grid territory. You also want to make sure it's signed and dated. One more thing I wanted to mention about the schedule, please. What it was.
I think because of the signature, sometimes in what I don't kind of figuring out what to do, you just good things and cut off too much to give you, rather than just getting filed with the signature. And change that not even go back and take the signature again from the child or whoever you're looking at.
So around the time of the witness test is when we would review your Schedule B. So if you fill it out, when you first start your project, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of your off-takers will have moved or no longer have active accounts. So it's a lot of reviewing accounts first, for no good reason really. So around the time of the witness test is when we ask that you send the Schedule B in, and we can go back and forth and let you know any issues with it before you have it signed and submitted. Anybody have any other questions? Correct. Yep.
Any questions online?
No.
All right, so that's the end of our slides. We got a few minutes for any additional questions. I think Jake just got up here. This is our last meeting for National Grid for this calendar year. Our next one will ultimately be in April or May. April?
In April, yes.
Yeah, in April. Not in this office, most likely either Waltham or Worcester. But that'll be the next one for National Grid. We get about 5 months. We are looking to make some changes that I mentioned earlier, right, for that survey getting it filled out. I already got the handed me in the back as you can fill out here, so I'm eager to see what the feedback is and how we can make things better or more specific to answering you guys' questions. Any other questions we didn't get a chance to ask and answer?
Hi, I don't know if this, I think this is live. My name is Stephanie Ware. I'm the Community Development Director with Lakewood, and I often have people come in and talk with me about leaf solar on their roof.
Mm-hmm.
And create a fault of the installer who's not coming in and checking with you first, but is there any way that these people are being charged even though they're not technically hooked in? So,
Yeah, so there's actually,
any thoughts on that?
yeah, this is not the question, but it's not our specialty, right? So we're focused more on the contract stuff, this is more being simple at work.
Right.
But, yeah, exactly what you're describing does happen quite often, right? That everybody's neighbors are putting solar on their roof, and all of a sudden there gets to be that tipping point of their grid that they're on for their transformer. It doesn't prevent them from being able to put solar on their house. It just increases the cost because now we have to do some modifications we have to make in that system, in that area.
Right, but see, the problem is you've got a person who's low middle income who's putting it on thinking, I'm doing the right thing because it's green, and it's actually the leasing company that's making the big win. But then to pass that on to somebody at that income level, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, we really don't have any control over that. We see it all the time. We get those questions. They come in. We actually answered one a week ago, right? Very specific to your scenario also. A low income person who was getting like a $6,000 or $7,000 bill because we had to upgrade a pole and transformer in order for them because the system that they were on in the area they were in was not capacity.
Should they do some kind of a pre-application if you had a resident?
See, the thing is it's not a resident.
Yeah.
It's the company that comes in.
Well, right, but somebody could check.
Well, so, correct. Right. First of all, the contract is not supposed to teach. Just my opinion, my feeling is that system is installed prior to that contract and the authority to correct that system.
Right, I guess.
So at that point. To your point, no, we can't do like a pre-app or like we a pre-report. We get 50 applications a day for simplified applications. So I'm going to tell you on Tuesday, or Smith Street is fine, and either later that day or on Wednesday it's not going to be fine. So providing that type of information. The thing we generally always say is, I know a bunch of people have transitioned out of like boots on the ground going out there, but if you're walking around and house 1, 2, and 3 have solar on it, and you're selling to house 4, most likely house 4 is going to have solar.
And that's actually the situation.
Yeah. So, these areas that become saturated, we are extremely saturated on the residential side in a lot of areas. And again, I think what we're struggling with a little bit now is when it really hit a couple of years ago, there was a lot of boots on the ground out there, people walking around and giving instructions about that. I think there's a lot more now in the store or on the phone to their point on, so you really don't have that visibility. So the thing I suggest is you're on the phone making that having that conversation, hey, does your neighbor have solar? What's in the area? But we have a number of areas that are Google.
Thank you.
Sure, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, that's
built on the same. That's all you can do.
Shouldn't the leasing company acquire that cost?
So I think the benefit
Legally, the person doesn't own it.
I think the benefit is customers should have something. Right.
You see, if you look at them, if you actually read those contracts, you'll see there's nothing in them.
The question about transformer breaks, and maybe also for that issue resident the fourth person, the other person, people will not really have a transformer, and I have solar installed. Likely the fourth person might need to have an upgrade.
Well, why haven't you installed yet?
I after graded and subsidizing it for me, right? Say it.
So feel free to talk to anyone here. So feel free to talk to anybody here. Anyone hanging around. Thanks again for everyone.